With our files uploaded, we're ready to start creating our first page. So from your course, go in your course navigation and click on Pages, and let's build our very first page. So to do that, we're going to click right here on the plus page button, and that of course is going to open up our first page, and that's going to give us our rich content editor. So your page can be whatever you want it to be titled. This is where you're going to put the title of that page, and this is what's going to be visible to students when they go into your distinct modules. So I'm going to call this first page 1.1 beaker. And that's because I'm going to put an image of a beaker into this page. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about how we can embed images in our rich content editor, and we're also going to be putting a little bit of text in here with the image. So there are two ways you can embed an image into your page. The first is you can click on this icon here that looks like the little photo icon in your rich content editor's toolbar. So if you click on this, that's going to open up a window that's going to allow you to embed an image, or you can click on images over here in this right hand column. So we're going to do both of them, or I'm going to at least demonstrate both of them to you, and then you can pick the one that you like and use that. All right, so let's go ahead and click on Embed Image first. So when you open up this window, it's going to give you several different options. If you have an image that is based on a URL, let's say you found it on Imager or you found it on Google Images, you can put that URL here and that will populate your image and embed it. Be wary though that some images on the internet especially might be copyrighted, and so if you are going to pull an image directly from the internet, you're going to need to give the correct form of credentials and citations for that particular image so that your students realize that it is copyrighted content and it is not something you have created yourself. You can click here and pick any of the images you've uploaded to your files from Canvas. So I could go into Unit 1, which I'm going to do here in a second, and I could pick Beaker, or any of the other folders that you have where you have image files. And then finally, Canvas is also tied to Flickr, which is an online image repository, and they have a Creative Commons area where you can actually pull images from Flickr as well. But I'm not going to use URL or Flickr, I'm going to use Canvas. So I'm going to go into my Unit 1 folder and I'm going to find my beaker picture. You go into whatever folder you created and find the picture you'd like to use. And that's going to populate a couple of parameters down here. The first is what's called the alt text. This is what Canvas writes into the code in your rich content editor, and this is what would be displayed if for whatever reason the image doesn't load and your students are trying to view it. So I'm going to put beaker, just to let my students know that this should be a picture of a beaker that they're seeing. Now if the image loads, they will never see this alternative text, but if it doesn't load, it's going to allow them to know what they should be looking at. And then the other parameters that are going to be populated here are the dimensions of the image. And the cool thing is, if you adjust these dimensions, you'll notice that the aspect ratio of them will be preserved. So here, let's say I don't want this to be 700 pixels, I could drop it down to 350, and when I move over here, this automatically adjusts to be 50% to match this. So I'm going to leave it at 700 and 469 for now, and I'm going to click Update. And you'll notice that this has embedded my beaker picture here in this text area. Okay. Now you'll notice that right now this beaker picture is very, very large and I can't see anything below it. Now let's say that I am dedicated to this picture being this large. I don't want it to be any smaller, but I don't want to have to keep going up and down in this tiny window to see what's above or below it. Well, if you want to extend the size of this window, simply come down here to this little corner, grab it, so click and hold, and then drag downward, and that will expand the size of your window. Just to let you know, your students won't have to worry about doing this. Your students' windows will always be the entire size of whatever content you place in here. So if I put pages and pages of content here, my students are going to have a very, very long page. They will never have to remember to click on this and drag it to see any of the additional content. Okay, now let's say I'm not tied to this image being that size. I can click on the image and I can actually resize it by simply grabbing one of these anchor points, and it doesn't matter which one because the aspect ratio is locked. So I can grab the corner and I can drag and I can make the image smaller. I can grab the side and drag and make the image larger, I can grab the bottom and drag and make the image a certain size. Now notice that once I reach the maximum size for the image, it looks like it's going to pull it farther, but then it snaps it back to its maximum size and orientation. So no matter which anchor point I grab and no matter how I drag this image, the aspect ratio of the image will always be maintained. Okay? So again, to get this image in here, we simply clicked Embed Image. But I told you there's a second way we could do this. So I'm going to delete this image. If you're happy with your image the way it is, you don't have to delete it. So I'm going to put an image in here using the alternative method. So my cursor is in this rich text area and I want to add in an image. So I'm going to come over here to the right-hand column, click on Images, and this is going to bring up any images that I have associated with my Canvas Files folder. And you'll notice there's my beaker image. I can literally just click on it and it drops it right in there. So there's my beaker image and it is now right in the same place. I can again click on it and resize it if I want to. Okay, so my beaker image is there. Now let's add some text. So to add some text, you first want to make sure your image isn't highlighted, because if it's highlighted when you start typing, you might accidentally delete that image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click in the white space below the image, and you'll notice there's a gigantic cursor here to the right of the image. So when I see that gigantic cursor, I'm going to hit return once, and that's going to start a new line for me. And I'm going to add some text here. This is going to be some very basic text. I'm going to put a beaker can be used to mix solutions. A very, very general definition of what a beaker can be used for. But hey, it's what I want. Now let's say that I'm not happy with the size of this text. I want it to be a little larger. Well, I can come here to font sizes and I can actually increase the size of that font. So if I want it to be 14 point, there it is. 18 point, there it is. I think 14 point should be fine. I can also choose here, if I want it to fall under a different category other than paragraph, I could say I want this to be header 4 or header 2. That's going to change the style of that text. But I'm going to choose paragraph and I'm going to choose 14-point font. So there we go. Okay, now let's say that I don't actually like the way that this text looks here. I don't like that it's aligned to the left. I want it to be centered. Well, I'm going to click this icon here to align the text to the center. Okay, so now I've got my image there and I've got my text. Okay, so I've embedded an image using one of these two methods, and now I'm going to go ahead and save. Okay, now before I save, there are two additional options that you might want to choose from. The first, who can edit this page? Anyone, teachers and students, or only teachers? Most likely, you're going to always want to leave this checked to only teachers. Okay, because this is probably going to be a lot of hard work you put into building these pages, and you don't want your students to be able to then manipulate them. But here, we'll talk about this a little later, what if I made some substantial changes to this page after my course went live? My students had already accessed it, but I wanted my students to know that I had made some substantial changes to this page. I might want to then check this so it would notify them that I had made changes. So we've embedded our image. Let's go ahead and save. And now we're going to get a preview of what our page will look like to students. Now, before we end this tutorial, I just want to point out that you may notice that I'm not really happy with the alignment of this text. It looked good when I was building the page, but now the image is here aligned to the left. The text is technically centered based on the page, but it looks really weird when it's kind of off-center from the image. So in the next tutorial, I'm going to go back in and I'm going to edit this text. And when I'm editing it, I'm going to purposefully make a mistake and show you one of the other cool features related to pages. Okay, so in the next tutorial, we're going to address the alignment of this text, and we're also going to address what happens if I go back into a page to do some work and I accidentally make a mistake.